So with that said, I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker, Mr. Michael Kneeland, President and Chief Executive Officer of United Rentals. Michael has spent his entire career in the equipment rental space, originally starting in Baltimore at a small company where his responsibilities grew over the years. He joined United in 1998 as district manager after United purchased Equipment Supply Company. Over the course of a decade, Michael's responsibilities expanded into key positions in sales and operations. He has now been CEO of United Rentals for over 10 years. Michael will be sharing his ideas and thoughts on the current landscape of the industry with a particular focus on M&A activity and surrounding cultures. So without further ado, Mr. Michael Kneeland.
Well, thanks, Lindsay, and hello, everyone. I'm glad everyone's here, and also thanks for supporting such an important event. So I'm delighted to see so many familiar faces here today, and I'm looking forward to sharing some thoughts with you about the industry and what we found to be keys to success. And I'm going to speak about two perspectives, one in my role at United Rentals, and also as a veteran equipment rental guy. In my early years, as she mentioned, the fundamentals and my learnings were almost exclusively in aerial. And that's where the fundamentals I learned about customer service. Now, my topic today is about the evolution of the equipment rental industry, both from a consolidation and culturally. And I've seen this privilege of seeing these things firsthand for more than 35 years. Yeah, really. I mean, beyond that, it's, you can tell my age. But I'll start by going back to 1997 when I started with United Rentals, or when United Rentals started. Although the equipment rental industry had been around since the World War, it really wasn't until Brad Jacobs launched just about 20 years ago that the industry saw the first national public consolidation as the primary growth for its strategy. So this year is a big year for us, or we're celebrating our 20th anniversary as a public company. In 1997, we reported total revenue of roughly $490 million and had just under 5,000 employees. This year, we expect to see total revenue of more than $6 billion, which is 13 times greater than 1997. With roughly 3 times the number of employees. So you can see over time, we've become a lot more efficient. Now, the initial strategy for the company was simple: grow big and do it as quickly as possible. What the founders understood was that there were advantages to scale. And I want to come back to that idea in just a minute. That strategy worked. Within the first year of operation, United Rentals merged with U.S. Rentals, and then we leapfrogged into the #1 position. But in those early years, as some of you may remember, and I see some of the familiar faces out here, acquisition was a core element of our growth strategy. And realistically, it was the surest way to get big fast. And there was a time during those early years when we thought about doing 2 or even 3 acquisitions a week. And the strategic model of growth through M&A has been adopted by other rental companies. It drove the consolidation of the industry, of the companies being rolled up locally, regionally, and nationally. It gave smaller rental operators the way to monetize their many years of blood, sweat, and tears. When someone talks about the industry consolidation in general terms, it's about acquiring companies. But on the flip side, it helps a lot of mom and pop owners retire comfortably and encourage new entrepreneurs to enter the industry. And we've seen that. So when I look back at the pace of our M&A at United in those early years, I'll be honest with you, it was frankly exhausting. But it also taught us very valuable lessons. And we learned to develop a playbook to integrate a company with the least amount of friction and with a focus of retaining key people. That's an important point. Now, over the years, our growth strategy has evolved, as you would expect, but I want to give you a snapshot of our process today. Broadly speaking, we ask ourselves three questions when we look at a potential acquisition. First, what are the attributes of a company under consideration, and how do they fit with our strategy of profitable growth? Now, in other words, is it in line with our business that expands or complements our core competencies? Now, for an example, we're always looking beyond and looking at rental products for our services and customers, but we don't offer yet, and that's where our specialty comes into play. And that's where it usually falls under in that operations for our specialty division. A good example is our acquisition of National Pump. Almost all of those categories were new to us. And a similar case can be made with RSC back in 2012. As you know, a general rental company, but it had a very robust industrial base and brought more diversity to our customer mix. So the second question is what we ask, what is the financial upside? And usually that relates to whether we can be a more effective owner than the current owner. And sometimes it's a matter of scale. We see how we can perform in North America and that platform provide growth opportunities or financial resources to invest in more growth. Or it may be just technology or our approach to fleet management. In other words, we need to bring something to the table that are simply not possible as a standalone business. And then the third, and this is very important in my mind, it's culture. We can successfully integrate employees that we bring on board, can we? Do they already have the value of the same things we do? You may think that's the easiest part, but actually it's the most difficult. And in our eyes, it's the most critical consideration from our point of view. And I can't stress enough that the people question is the toughest one. It's the piece of the puzzle that keeps me up at night. So when we acquire a company, our expertise, customer relationships, I think you all know, resides with employees. And we respect that. And it's our job to prove that what value we bring to each person has to offer. How can we help them? And a great deal of energy goes into winning the hearts and minds of those individuals. So when we think about these things, we also ask ourselves, can we move quickly? Because a long drawn-out affair of integration is in nobody's best interest. Least of all, when you think about all of the things that we can do, and it's just very difficult, let alone the employees, it's also the customers. So in our acquisition for NES, for an example, which we closed last April, it took us only 9 days to bring the branches onto our IT system. That was enormously important for everybody because it set the stage for harmonizing the customer accounts and sharing of equipment. Then almost immediately, our executive team began a dialogue with our new employees. We held town hall meetings, and all employee phone calls, and we gave them employees new access to our intranet community, and we dedicated specialist teams in areas like HR, IT, branding, and a whole list of others. So to recap, there are three main things that we look for: strategic fit, financial upside, and culture. If we develop a comfort level, and it only comes after vigorous due diligence, and sometimes it's a loud debate when we think about it, we tackle these issues from many different angles to uncover any flaws in our thinking. The truth is, and this is hard to believe, but we pass on the vast majority of acquisition opportunities because of these items. We minimize our risk and maximize the service to our customers. And if you sit back, I think our track record kind of demonstrates that. Now, another thing to bear in mind is the better acquisitions have to offer is cost, revenue synergies. There's always some redundancies. And given the nature of the rental business, there should be meaningful cross-sell opportunities as well. Now, I mentioned a few minutes ago about the pump acquisition in 2014. It brought us a customer base that was renting assets that we didn't carry, and it made us a better single-source provider. Now, our own customer base at the time included companies that used industrial pumps. They just weren't renting from us. Since going into the pump business, we've expanded at least 18 branch openings, since the acquisition, and all of them outside the oil patch. And one final word on cross-selling, and this is something that every rental company should think about with every expansion, even if you're staying with your own current asset mix or just adding a single cold start. Our entire industry needs to strive for better return on capital, and cross-selling areas of high demand can help you get there. So in the past 5 years, we've done 13 acquisitions. This year we did NES in April, and just recently NEF. And also on top of that, we had the Cummins rental operations. And we added well over 100 locations through M&A. Now this is consistent with our dual focus of growth strategy and our way to expand our footprint and specialty. And it's also a way of feeding our core gen rent business. So when we invest in growth, we must see a clear path to achieve the goals within a reasonable time frame. Whether it's acquisitions or even greenfield expansion, the resources we invest must drive returns higher over time, creating economic value. And we think about our approach as a balanced one. And it's not putting all of our eggs in one basket. Now, obviously, we're not the only rental company using acquisitions to fuel growth. Our large competitors, especially those with financial flexibility, are also out there on the hunt. They, too, recognize the value of scale. Now, one of the main reasons I believe the industry is seeing a step up in M&A of activity in the cycle is it still looks like there's room for growth for the next couple of years. Now, this appeals both to buyers and sellers. Now, we expect, the industry forecast, ARAs here, continued growth over the next few years. And most of you are probably seeing healthy demand for your services, just as we are. But what's more is the rental business model is structured differently than any other industry. Rental operators can generally survive a downturn with prudent application of capital allocation. That's because you know how to sell off fleet to generate cash and stay in the game and serving your customers. That's why the idea of buying companies when the cycle turns down is attractive in principle, but not necessarily in practice. Typically, it's the seller who determines the timing of a possible sale. And most companies become available when the seller decides to make the company available. It can be a tough balancing act. You think about the deal, the price, it's the right time. No one bats 1,000. I think United Rentals is coming pretty close to it, but we're not, we do make errors and we have to learn from them. So sometimes with M&A opportunity, the economies of scale are too compelling to pass up. And this ties back to the financial side I mentioned. Things like back office operations, technology, fleet, operations, purchase, real estate, healthcare, can all be made more efficient through scale. It's all part of the total value proposition that we can bring to the table and how we focus. So here's what gets me really excited about our industry. We're still in the early days of consolidation. This is an industry that is very fragmented. If you take United, as large as we are, and with all the acquisitions we just did, we still only have at best a 13% share. The American Rental Association says that membership over the past 5 years has grown more than 15%. There are new companies entering the industry every day, and that's healthy for everyone. And at the same time, we must be ready to face the competitive challenge. Now, I'd like to share some practical ideas of competing through culture. As I said earlier, very important. And I'm guessing that relatively few of you have a formal M&A, but everyone, even a local business, can compete through culture and values. Here are some of the things that we do at United Rentals that make our culture the centerpiece of our competitive advantage. First, there's diversity. That's a word that gets bandied around a lot. But at United Rentals, we think beyond the traditional definitions of diversity, beyond gender identity, race, nationality, sexual orientation, disability, and age. We also look for diversity of experience, perspectives, and education. And I believe this broader definition of diversity makes us a stronger company. In fact, I know it does. I've seen it firsthand. We're more innovative. We're more connected to our communities. We're recruiting talent because they're willing to listen. We're willing to listen to someone when they have a different idea. Now, it's fair to say that we have instilled a culture of listening to our employees. It wasn't easy. We still have to work at it every day, and that's one of the biggest challenges I have. And I want to share some of the mechanics that work for us. So let me say up front, there are things that we are doing that are being implemented on a large scale. And we have over 14,000 employees, but conceptually, all the things I'm talking about can be adopted for any small operator, small operations. But one of the most effective tools is the town hall meeting. This is where our senior executives travel around to various areas to meet with groups of employees face to face. People like our COO, Matt Flattery, CFO, Bill Plummer, myself. I love town halls. Everything is fair game. Nothing is off the table. Now, we've held 14 town halls between May and August, in part because of the onboarding of our new NES team members. Over 1,100 employees participated. And I can tell you, they weren't shy about voicing their opinions. And frankly, I was very pleased to see so many different perspectives and ideas that are out there. The town hall gives us an example to lead. The employees see the leaders out there believing in an open mind, and keeping our eyes open and listening, always willing to change if we can do things better. And quite honestly, it's very rewarding. And we don't need 1,000 employees to make this exercise useful. A small business owner can sit down with each employee, and typically do, for a one-on-one annual review. But it's also important to get the group together periodically for informal free-for-alls, even if it's just for 4 or 5 employees. Now, it may sound obvious, but I can tell you it's amazing how often this simple principle slips through the cracks of a rental operation, and we see it time and time again. Now, another key importance of retaining talent always starts with good onboarding programs. And we take time to orient new employees so they have a clear sense of our company's values and goals. Explain how they can best succeed at their job, and also how can be as specific as possible. Forbes magazine quoted a study that found that 31% of new graduates in America feel that companies properly integrate them. That's not good. That's not what we want. Poor onboarding hurts a company's ability to attract new employees, more importantly, to retain them as we want to keep them on board. Now, another way we use our culture to gain a competitive advantage is emphasizing to our employees that we live the values. This is more than a code of conduct. Employees need to understand each value in the culture that each one delivers to our customers and the communities that they serve. If you take safety for an example, that's also a buzzword. Who doesn't love safety? But we make it a daily effort to ensure that safety is a living, breathing thing to our employees. On our last earnings call, we announced that in June was the safest record in our company's history. And when we do an acquisition, we make sure that safety message gets out there loud and clear. On day one, when we close the deal of the acquired branches, they get a complete new supply of United Rentals safety gear, personal protective equipment for all employees. And so it's worth thinking about what your company stands for and how you can keep reinforcing values in both the practical and aspirational terms. Now, here's something I am very proud of. 4 years ago, we started the United Rentals Compassion Fund. This is a 501c3 organization that's primarily funded through employees and through their own donations. And it's in times of extreme need that like the recent hurricanes, the company makes also company donations to the fund. But the fund reinforces the idea that we're a family. that we take care of our own, that we also have each other's back when times are tough. This idea of family is the single greatest underpinning of our culture. In the weeks following the Hurricane Harvey and Irma, our employees have donated over $70,000 to the fund to date, and the company put in another $50,000. The fund's board is composed of branch employees and have approved over 254 emergency grants of $500 to each employee in need. And 20 grants were based on specific applications received. Now, none of this is done behind a curtain. We report to our employees on a regular basis. In the true spirit of family, the board voted in September to extend the grant eligibility to all the NEF employees, even though the acquisition hadn't even finalized yet. I'm very proud of that. So what's the takeaway? We have a culture of being able to count on each other. And you don't have to have a company or have significant challenges, but getting out to thousands of employees to make them feel like a family is important. But that's why it's also gratifying for me to step back and measure that and say, the employee engagement score that we get, and we do it frequently, stay in the high 90s. This is the third year in a row. Everyone wants to earn a good living, work safely, but employees also want to feel that their job has a purpose. And that's the single biggest difference between employees of today versus the employees of 10 or 20 years ago. The workplace doesn't define people like it did back then. If a job is just a job in your company, good people are going to turn over. You're going to lose them over time. Today's employees want to feel bigger, want to feel part of something bigger. They want to do meaningful work. And there are a lot of ways to engage employees as doing something bigger than themselves. Make them feel proud. Things to tell their kids about when they go home. That's what employees really want from a company culture. Now, we do things at United Rentals with our support to the military veterans, the National Association of Women in Construction, Fisher House, and a whole raft of local causes, as well as the Compassion Fund. So let's step back and take a look at meaningful work. We're in the business of helping people. I'm talking about the entire rental industry, not just United. And we're there to get things done. We're on the front lines of disaster recovery. We're a voice of safety on job sites. We're bringing high tech to the construction industry. Our industry is part of the backbone of the national economy. So I ask you, do your employees fully understand how important they are? Now, I'll give you a couple of examples that show effective engagement and employees in our most recent survey. 94% replied that they have a very clear idea of their job responsibilities. 96% understand how their branch contributes to the success of United Rentals. And 97% say they work beyond what is required to help the company. Those are key connections. When employees understand what is required and they see value in what they do, they will go the extra mile, which in turn make them more valuable. And now I'm going to bring this back full circle to the industry evolution and leave you with this thought. I don't think that we're anywhere near reaching our full potential as an industry. Well, looking at the long term, rental penetration is still relatively low compared to some of the other mature industries. And even short term, I think that we're seeing growth from the current economic model. And if I didn't believe in this industry with my whole heart and soul, I wouldn't be investing our shareholders' money in the M&A activities we've undertaken this year. And by the way, because I know this is an aerial conference, let me say that I believe strongly in the aerial sector as well. A year ago, in August of 2016, we had about 122,000 units of aerial fleet in our fleet. Those were boom scissors and reach forklifts. This year, that number before NEF was about 146,000 units. And most of those increase came from our acquisition of NES in April. So you can take that as a big vote of confidence in Ariel. So I hope I've given you some food for thought on the importance of company culture and growing your business. Now, I wish all of you a safe and profitable fourth quarter, and I hope 18 is as good as 17, which I do believe, but I hope everyone here has a great 18 as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. Do you have just a minute for maybe a question or two? Okay. Does anyone in the audience have a quick question that they would like to ask Mr. Kneeland? We've got a roaming mic. Here we go.
Don't be shy.
Michael, you talked about how you've been in this industry a long time. And I just wondered about when you wake up in the morning. What is it about, what do you look forward to most when you wake up in the morning before you go to the office? What's the main motivator in your day? What do you still live and breathe for on a daily basis?
So what motivates me every day is the customer and the demand. I think that we are a service industry, and we have to think, well, what is the customer? What is the pain points of a customer? We're beyond rental. It's not just about having a piece of equipment when they call up. They usually have something that they need to do. And are we helping them in a way that can change their outcome? I have seen for over the years, going back to 1978 when I got into this industry, there's a lot of things that we do today that we did back then. I find that a failure on our part because I think we need to change. Our customers are changing. And so what compels me is how we can think about the customer, engaging that customer, but go beyond just renting. What is it we can do that can assist that customer in a way? And quite honestly, that's why I think competitiveness is actually a good thing, because it keeps you on your toes and always thinking about it. And we're a big company, and a lot of little companies, smaller companies, can move quicker. And I find that to be intriguing as well. So I don't assume that we know it all. And that may sound odd from everybody in this room. We go out there and we learn from every acquisition, regardless of who they are, where they came from, and size. We learn something very valuable from it, and it's up to us to take that and bring it forward. And that, to me, I find very, very insightful.
Anyone else have a question? Murray?
Michael, you mentioned at the end that you're confident that the rental industry still has a long way to grow in North America. I'm just wondering what gives you that level of confidence. After all, the access business here is already the most mature in the world. So I'm just wondering how much more it can grow and what makes you so confident about it.
Well, I know we have a lot of vendors here. They need to come up, they're coming up with new products that open new markets. The fundamental of our industry is always boiled down to two things: safety and productivity. And those are the things that are not going to change. In fact, if anything, they're going to escalate. And so I do believe that rental plays a role. I think we're also in a shared economy. It's okay today not owning something. And if you take a look at the generations as we go through it, obviously the millennial generation is very much in tune with not owning much of anything. They want to use it and be able to move on with it. So I do believe with productivity and safety, those two fundamentals are always going to be a demand driver. Not every industry can lean on that. So I do believe that will continue to grow. And we're always looking at ways of cutting costs, and it drives efficiencies. In our own company, we look at a lean process. How can we take it? I mean, if you look at the United Rentals, as I opened up, back in 1997 to where we are today, our rental revenue per head, if you think about productivity, was somewhere in the teens. That's rental revenue generated per person per month for all your employees. Today, it's roughly over 38,000 a month. So you can see how, driving efficiencies is going to continue. It's not going to stop. And by the way, technology is going to drive us as well.
Great. Thank you very much, Michael.
I poured that for you.
I'll put a bottle there.